A Quick Steam, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. Jacob fumbled clumsily with his small bronze key, hurriedly trying to get his locker open. How he hated getting undressed with all those men around him. Today, his workout had been quite light. Just a few abdominal exercises that Kaylin had given him and a 3-mile walk on the treadmill. This amateurish exercise was not going to get him any thinner. How depressing. Nonetheless, today was a good day. Jeopardy had been on during his walk, so he was able to forego his subpar podcasts and any would-be new best friends trying to talk to him about his tattoos on his exposed arms. Locker 128 finally swung open with a loud clack. Jacob looked around to make sure that the disturbance hadn't drawn any unwanted attention from the elderly men who roamed nude around the gym's locker room throughout the afternoon. Thankfully, his ears and eyes picked up no shuffling, no talking, no one was even showering, so the silence said. The mesh green gym shorts slid off, a memory of school colors and glory gone by in garment form. Then came the sporty boxer briefs. These were his favorite gray pair. They cradled everything just right for a good run. Back when he could run. As soon as his lower half was exposed, Jacob deftly swung his towel around himself, just in case anyone decided to come swaggering into the locker room while he was still disrobing. Feeling more confident with the rough, scratchy blue towel around his waist, he peeled his damp tank top off his back, threw his glasses haphazardly into the locker, and placed his phone/MP3 player/lifeline gently on his stack of clothes within. Locker number 128. He smiled to himself as he walked through the empty, cavernous room toward his awaiting treat. Though the health club offered a great many services, Jacob was always a bit too embarrassed or busy to take part in most of it. In particular, he could never bring himself to strip down and use the facility's steam room, sauna, or whirlpool, all of which would be extremely beneficial to his sore muscles and the knees that had forsaken him after so many years of being a competitive athlete. But today, oh today, he had told himself when getting dressed at his house that today he would allot the full time of 20 minutes for a steam. He had steamed at the gym before, but for only 4 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Essentially, he would inevitably get bored, remember some pressing errand that simply had to be taken care of, or he would lose his ability to relax when other naked males would begin to saunter into the steam room with him. It was a popular spot after all. Today, none of those problems would arise though. He had already resolved himself to stay the full time suggested by the peeling instructions on the wall outside the steam room. There was literally nothing for him to do, his job being on hold until the fall, and there wasn't a soul around to come and try to make chummy nude conversation with him. This would be the perfect day for a steam. Jacob reached the bathing half of the locker room complex. The shower that he hated so much because the heads were so close together that men had to touch when showering was to his left. The whirlpool, that always had an infestation of geriatric war veterans who were far too confident in their aging bodies, was directly in front of him. The sink alcove where all the businessmen made themselves look good for their secretaries was to his right. And there in the corner, just beyond those adulterer-aiding sinks and mirrors, was the steam room and sauna room. They were basically one unit working off the same heat, but they were most assuredly separate. The dry heat of the sauna had always made Jacob nauseous, but the wet heat of the steam room transported him back to many an adventure, whether it be trekking through the rainforests of New Zealand or busting his hump during football practice amidst the Arkansan August heat and humidity back in his high school years. He couldn't help but smile. Steam billowed out of the room when he opened the door. No one else was on the benches. He hastily closed the door so as not to lose more steam, and he unceremoniously stripped his towel from around his waist. He was free! In here, there were no prying eyes. In here, his ever-softening and widening body was sleek and covered in only dim light. In here, his failures in life took pause to allow him to silence those nagging voices and the perpetual chorus of, "You're wasting your life, you're wasting your life," and hear naught but his own heartbeat, breathing, and blood flowing through his veins, only accompanied by the hissing of the steam from time to time. Then, without warning, Jacob began to feel ill at ease. The walls began to sing eerie songs to him. His imagination began to wander, as it often did. Most people credit strange feelings with premonitions to the last horror film they watched, or maybe the meatloaf from last night's dinner. Jacob, however, had always felt he had a way of feeling when situations were off. Pop! Tick, 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 pop! The hair on the back of Jacob's neck stood on end. The silence had been shattered for an instant, but the harsh sounds he heard carried from the main corridors of the health club sounded aggressive, mean, deadly. The hiss of the steam continued on, keeping the room dim and hazy. Jacob had always heard that fear often took one's breath. This was not the case for him. His quick, heavy breathing was pulling in far too much of the thick, wet air at an alarming rate, making him retch. Thank God for being unable to eat before a good workout. Jacob may not be the most rough and tumble guy, but he knew gunshots when he heard them. Every fiber of him shouted out that running was his only option. After all, he was stuck in a 5x5 room with nothing but a small towel to hide behind. 4 more pops brought more dire thoughts. People were dying. They had to be, right? The gym was overflowing with residents of the small town hoping to better themselves for God knows how many reasons. How many times had he hoped for a moment to be extraordinary? How many times had he imagined himself a hero, yet here he sat, naked, sweaty, and so very afraid. He began to go through different scenarios in his head, in hopes that those fictitious mental feats of heroism would inspire him to move past this temporary paralysis. He could exit the steam room this way. He could disarm a foe with a towel that way. His nudity would distract, somehow. Pop! Chick, 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 pop! He could not believe that he could hear the gunfire, but not any screaming. These walls and the hissing of the steam really were blocking out anything beyond those reports. Jacob realized that he'd not even stood up at this point. Jacob realized that he would not stand up. Period. Here, in this room, he would wait out this maelstrom. Allow this slaughter to continue while he rested in veritable anonymity and safety, as he always had, as he always did, as he always would. And he would finish his quick steam. Thank you for listening to A Quick Steam. The backing tracks enhancing this story were both taken from the Free Music Archive. The first track is by Blue Dot Sessions and is called Chopin Mazurka Opus 50 No. 3 and comes from the album The Mazurka. It is being used under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial 4.0 International License. The second track is by Josh Woodward and is called Worlds Fall Apart, instrumental version, and comes from his album Addressed to the Stars. It is being used under a Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. Thank you to Free Music Archive and these two fantastic artists for sharing these pieces with the world. Please stay tuned for our next story from one of the fan favorites, Nicholas B. Morris. This week's tale from Mr. Morris is called Lazarus, After the Miracle.